All right, so I have been off this channel for a while. A few random posted videos here as I've been building my business, my consulting business. But I'm coming back, and it's good to be with you back on Durand On Demand podcast version, also in YouTube. I gotta say, there's so many things that I want to talk about having been off the channel for about 6 months. First of all, I've had just an amazing year last year. I want to walk through what that looked like and provide a little bit of an update. But major highlight, I got married to the most beautiful woman ever. And she's just tremendously supportive in what we do and a great partner in life. She is affectionately known by people at my company as Mrs. Dragon Slayer, and that's pretty awesome. But Miranda is amazing. Let's see. My son was ordained a priest last year, which is unbelievable. He's doing a fantastic job as a priest. That's a long process, great dedication. And another son that was married. In fact, my son who was ordained a priest was ordained 2 weeks before my son got married, and he married my son and my daughter-in-law. And by the way, they have a baby on the way. That is I have 9 grandkids now, when you include the 2 that are actually on the way. So that's another huge part of the year. But the son that just got married, they have a baby on the way. My daughter got engaged. My other son got engaged. I launched 2 books. Both became bestsellers. Leading Giants was #1 debut for new books on Amazon and leadership and business. And I have a book for those of you who are Catholic and you follow me as a Catholic called The Fountain of Youth. The only true way to stay young forever is confession. And that book would be, if it was running through those channels, but it doesn't run through those channels, would have been on the New York Times, I think, every week for the 12 weeks that it came out. So that's in a movement called 12 Men, where I encourage men to take their families to confession. For those of you that are not Catholic, that might be not as relevant of an update, but part of my life. I acted my first film with Tommy Lee Jones and James Franco. I actually didn't do a scene with Tommy Lee Jones, but with James Franco, who I normally would meet these people and know them ahead of time, but I've never acted in a film before. I'm in the film industry just with some investment projects and other writing projects that I do. It's not a central part of my life, but a director friend of mine said, hey, I've got a spot for you in this. And so I had 10 lines, actually. That's not insignificant. Most actors are just hoping to be in the corner there, but that was a lot of fun. So the first thing that I ever did in a Hollywood film was to pull up as a police officer and give James Franco a hard time for sitting on a bridge where he is not supposed to be. So, Stephen, you maybe show some pictures of these in B-roll. So it was kind of a crazy year. Things are settling a little bit now as the business is launched. By the way, I also sold one of my other companies for not a small amount. That went well. Too. So it was a pretty busy year. So I had to take a little bit of time away. It was after the wedding. I went on my honeymoon. I came back and I decided that I just needed to settle in and get some work done. Okay. Now that that work has been done and things have been going like they have, I want to talk about the program that I am launching now, that I just recently launched, and it's the Dragon Slayer program. So this is important because I'm going to give you free information. You don't even have to pay for it. If you do want to dive in further, you can do that. But Leading Giants as an organization, this is not a sales pitch. It's a description of what I do and why I do it. And then I'm going to get into today the root of the topic, which is signs of lack of accountability to yourself and to others. And I won't just stop on the negative side of that. I'm going to show you how to overcome these so you can actually accomplish the things in life that you need and want to accomplish. That's going to be a super important part of this. But let's just kind of go through what these programs are. In Leading Giants, I have 2 divisions. One is called the Dragon Slayer division, and that's the personal growth, leadership, CEO coaching. If you're an entrepreneur and you want to scale your business and build it, I'm going to show you how. If you want to build an organization, I'm going to show you how. And by the way, very different than what most people do. What most people are doing online is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen before. All they do is teach people how to build influencer businesses. That's really the #1 thing out there. Is you want to have a YouTube channel, you want to have followers on LinkedIn, you want to have followers on Facebook. By the way, this is one of the reasons I can afford to walk away from my channel for 6 months and have it not affect me, because those really aren't in fact, they're not at all my revenue streams. They're just something that I do. And when I'm away from that, that's when I'm actually doing things to build businesses and whatnot. But there's all these influencers trying to influence people to be influencers. And I will tell you, I know so many of them personally at a personal level. I've fired some of them, or I've worked with others too, who, by the way, are like these online influencers that haven't ever built anything except for a mild following, and for some bigger followings, and actually for some millions of people following them online, but they haven't actually ever built anything. And the only thing they teach people how to do is build followings online, which, by the way, just in case you don't know, what that means is how to look good on a camera, have good thumbnails, learn the algorithms, and get information out, and mostly steal information from other people who have actually done it. Then there are people who know how to build business. There are many of those online too, by the way. They've built companies, and when you follow them, you're going to get advice that comes from a person who's actually done something, and they know how to lead people and how to scale. So that's important. So that's what we do on the Dragon Slayer side. We teach you how to lead, how to build, and how to scale, not just how to have a following. In fact, I don't care if you've got less than 500 connections on LinkedIn or 1,000 followers on YouTube, but you built a $300 million business. I'll show you how to do that. Okay. Now, the second side of it is Decibel 130. When you talk about driving revenue and driving growth, you have to talk about it from 6 different pillars. And these have changed over the years. The first one's called presence management. And again, this is not a sales pitch, but it's for you to understand what it is that you need to do to build your company before I get into these signs of lack of accomplishment or lack of accountability. The first is presence management. This used to be simple back in the day before the internet. Presence management was having a storefront, a front door, and a sign on it saying, here we are. You're present. People know how to find you. You're in the phone book. That was it. Now it's online issues. And they have to do with a lot of things like listings and social media, et cetera. Then there's the second side of it is to know your market. So these pillars, you can kind of look at them as friendship, right? If you're an unavailable friend, people don't know where to find you, you can't have friendship. If you want to build revenue, you look at it like friendship. In fact, I have a PDF on this that if you want to go ahead and make a comment below or contact me at, is it admin? I don't, you know what? I'm just going to I have my staff will do it anyway. Dave at leadinggiants.com, Dave at leadinggiants.com. But make a comment, because if you comment, then I'll send this to you. If you don't comment, I won't send it to you. But I'll send you a PDF on a fuller description of what it means to have friendship and revenue. So if you want to have friends, you have to be present. You also have to know what friends you want. That's marketing. Okay, this analogy really helps people build their business because they can sit in their boardroom and they can say, where are we a bad friend with our brand and with revenue? And they can use this analogy to solve the problem. Now, there's more to it than that. But the second one is marketing. Okay, what friends do I want? Okay, describe them, know who they are. The third thing is, how can I go see my friends and how often do I see them? That's advertising. Okay, showing up to the party where your friends are and showing up often. And then there's branding, and that's showing up to the party the right way. You have to show up in a way that people would actually want to choose you as the friend or choose you, of course, as the brand. Then there's sales. What is sales? Sales is doing all of that right, but then bringing somebody along that actually speaks on your behalf to the potential friend, saying that this is the friend that you should choose. And then there's customer service. That's just being a good friend. Sorry when you make a mistake. Hey, here's a birthday card, keeping in touch, and making sure that everything is going well for them. And also asking, how can I be more of a friend to you? So that analogy matters, and we build that. So there are many different things on that side that we provide as a solution. So we might walk into one organization with one of our growth coaches, and the growth coaches specialize in different things, okay? But they might walk in with one specialty, but find out this organization has really great digital presence, really great advertising, but their sales team is just a wreck. So we'll rebuild their sales team for them or their sales model for them. Or they've got everything going, but their digital side is low, in which case we can provide some solutions ourselves. But all the advertising and media contacts that I have, we can give them a great referral to somebody who can actually do that for them, Best Version Media being one of those great options, especially regarding the magazines, 1,300 of them where they can actually micro-target in a way that nobody else can. Fantastic. Then there's other things too besides that, like just on the general coaching side. So they might have all this together, and they might have a really good revenue mind, but they're just not good at leading people or attracting the right people. So we'll help set up recruiting programs for them and leadership programs. So there's a lot of different things that we do for people when it comes to that. Okay, let's dive into the meat of the material. The meat of the material is the signs that you are not accountable. Now, what's really important to note is that there is a parallel life that people will live when they're supposed to be accountable. So as an entrepreneur, you need to be accountable to yourself, but you're also going to be accountable to your employees. You're going to be accountable to your customers and to your clients, and also sometimes to the people who've funded your business. So you are going to be accountable. So if you'll notice, there's two sides to the accountability: accountability to self and accountability to others. And that's when you're the big boss in charge, okay? Now, if you're working for somebody else, you're also going to have accountability. Three different ways. You're going to have accountability to yourself. You're going to have accountability to the people who you provide the service to within the job, and you're going to have accountability to the person who hired you or is your boss. So you've kind of got three-way accountability when it comes to that sort of thing. So this accountability, the signs of a lack of accountability are the same. It doesn't matter what direction. If you work for yourself, if you work for somebody else, if you're an independent salesperson or you're an engineer, but you've been given a lot of autonomy to accomplish things that you want to on timelines that you're setting. So I want to talk about them because if you don't identify them in yourself, you can't identify them in others if you lead others, and you can't correct them. So the first one is ambiguity. When you are being asked by somebody else to provide reasons for your lack of activity or your lack of success, you will be ambiguous. So somebody will say, well, how many appointments did you do? A lot is the answer. How is it going? Not so good, or pretty good, or these random things that don't make sense. And you're going to be totally ambiguous with it. You will not, by the way, even when they ask a specific question like, well, okay, how many calls did you make? They're not going to answer the question. The answer to the question is going to be something like, I'm following the program. Okay, well, that's not an answer to the question. The question is, how many calls did you make? And there's this certain low level of consciousness they have, which says, I need to be honest about this. So I'm going to evade your answers by not directly lying and saying, I only made 2 calls when I was supposed to make 50. They're not going to say that. They're going to say, I'm following the program. Why? Well, you need to make 50 phone calls. Making 2 is a part of following the program. They're just leaving out that they didn't do 48 other ones. And somehow this soothes their conscience while they're evading the answer. If you're ambiguous with yourself or ambiguous with others, this is what I would say to you if I was leading you. And I do say this quite often to people that I'm leading and help them. I say, stop lying to yourself and stop lying to me. You know, I say more gentle than that. But listen, if you cannot tell the truth to yourself, you can't tell it to me. So a lot of times people will say things too, like, you know, I'm really focused on. And it's not a very relevant thing. This is the second thing. So we've got ambiguity first, okay? The next one that we have is positive news about nothing, okay? So I'm really fired up. They'll tell you that. I'm on it. They'll send you a motivational quote about the difference between, being a person of accomplishment and somebody that's not. But they don't actually do anything and they don't answer their questions. So they remain ambiguous and they have a positive energy. I'm making connections. I'm on it. Good to go. You can count on me. Well, okay, I'm just asking you a simple question. What is your plan? When are you going to work today? What is your goal that you're setting out to do? This is like the Elon Musk Doge thing. You know, he is simply asking people, and I don't want to get into the whole political complications of this, okay? But he's asking people, just in the loosest terms, tell me on a Monday with an email, what did you accomplish last week? I can straight up tell you right now, anybody who is not willing to do that, outside of somebody who he did give an exception to, which is a person with either super confidential information or high clearance who can't actually divulge that, but to the general government employees to say, what did you accomplish last week? Anybody who is not willing to tell you what they accomplished last week is not doing it on principle. They're doing it because they didn't do jack crap. That's why. They're absolutely, ask me what I accomplished last week, I'll tell you exactly what I accomplished last week. And if I didn't accomplish anything, I will tell you that. But if I did, it's easy to do. But you can't answer that question if you didn't do anything. And by the way, I can tell you right now, if you disagree with me right now, I would invite you on the show and we will disagree. But I know I can't convince you. Because if you're not willing to provide a simple list, now you might say 3 things because I was only focused on 3 things and I accomplished those big 3 things. Fine, that would be just the same. In fact, I'm sure Elon would accept that sort of answer because it would make sense. But it's like, what did you do? What did you accomplish? If you are afraid to answer that question, it is not because you don't want to be held accountable by somebody like Elon. Now, you might just absolutely refuse to because you don't like Elon, but if you can't answer that question or you're unwilling to answer the question, it's because you didn't do jack. Because that question should be answered even if Elon's not asking it. Okay, that is a question that you should just understand the answer to. So if you're ambiguous or you have positive news about nothing or a refusal to answer something like that, it's because you're not held accountable to yourself. And on a government job, it's so easy to hide anyway. That's what you're doing. And you're surrounded by a bunch of people who are also hiding and then helping you hide. Not everywhere. There are some government employees that are absolutely fantastic. And even the DMV, which people make fun of, I'll sometimes go to the DMV and walk away saying, that person is one of the best employees I've ever heard. And they were super helpful. So I think that the blanket kind of look at low productivity just because it's government is a bad idea. But to know that there are massive pockets of inefficiency where people are sheltered by more inefficient leaders, yeah, that's there. That's why that's not happening. It's a lack of accountability. So we have ambiguity, we have positive news about nothing, and the next thing is we have slow, erratic, low communication, okay? Not really communicating very much, just on an island, hiding. I always tell leaders of organizations, the number one thing that you have to look for when you're leading your team is how they will hide. Even top performers will sometimes hide. Now, they actually deserve the right to take a break if they are performing, but there are others that aren't performing at all and they're just hiding. And people say, what do you mean they're hiding? Well, I mean the people that are working at home or other places that if you could actually see with infrared how little they worked, you would be so mad. Now, the ones to look at most are the ones who are coming to you constantly saying, I'm overworked and underpaid. Okay? That's the first place to look. Now, some of them are actually honestly telling the truth, and they're good advocates for themselves, and frankly speaking, you should cut them a break and pay them more. But most people who do that, and I will tell you, I have known some people over the years that would confide in me, not fully aware of what I do, because the friendship isn't where I'm going to come to them and say, hey, look at me, look who I am. But they'll talk about their boss, and they'll say, they have all these demands and responsibilities they want to give me, and I work from home, but then they will also simultaneously divulge that they love their job because they only have to work a couple hours a day, yet they're a full-time employee. So they simultaneously complain about how they're overworked and they have too much responsibility and not appreciated, but they're only working a couple hours a day, which is completely just a desire to be lack of accountable. I mean, if you made these people actually now, wake up, you went to their house and you said, you're working from home, but I'm going to stand next to you at 8 o'clock. I'm going to make sure you take a 15-minute break in the morning, and then I'm going to watch you. You can take an hour break at lunch, and then you can take a 15-minute break after that, and then you're going to work till 5 o'clock, and then you can be done. Now, by the way, most real professionals and adults hate to be under the microscope that much. That's not really the point of the metaphor, because I don't do that with people that I work with ever. But if you were to basically demand that much actual productivity or time out of them, that very simple schedule that I gave you would overwhelm them because of how little they're working. But they are slow to communicate, they communicate low, they're erratic in their communication. Now, there's an opposite thing, and that is like a hyper-detailed communication of things that really don't make sense that they're telling you. And that leads me to the third thing, and that's complication. I've done it before where I've built departments as an entrepreneur, because when you start off, you're doing everything on your own. And I've built departments, and then I've handed those departments over to somebody else. Now, I understood the department very well, and the organization, by the time I handed it over, it was efficient, and the program was built. Now I turn it over, and when I turn it over to somebody, and I say, how's it going? We talk about it. They talk in a way that's so complicated, I don't understand what the heck they just said. And I'm like, well, tell me more. And usually my first thought is usually quite charitable. And it's that, they're innovating in the process or in the program. So they've developed it beyond my understanding. So let me see if I can understand this further. And then I'll ask questions. And I realize, no, that didn't actually happen. They're literally just deflecting because of a lack of accountability by talking to me in a way that they know is going to be confusing, so I don't even know how to ask them questions and then move forward. This is why one of the things I've always said is the most complicating thing or the fascinating thing that I see in business is when two people have a conversation and they don't answer each other questions. Somebody says, how many people were at the meeting and they need to know for marketing purposes? I've said this many times before, so it's just a quick thing. And the person responds, a lot. That's not an answer. Or it was a really good meeting, or we had chicken. Those aren't answers. You need to know the answer to the question. So as the leader, ask a relevant question. As a subordinate, answer the question that they asked, or as a partner. As a leader, if they didn't answer your question, ask it until they answer it, because otherwise, why did you ask it in the first place, right? So you have ambiguity. You have positive news about nothing. You have slow, low, erratic communication. You have complications, okay? Then you have self-righteous deflection. Self-righteous deflection. This is a huge one for a lack of accountability. See, when a person is not accountable, this is the reality of their life. They're lazy. They don't accept responsibility. they lie. If they're being paid and not doing the work, they're stealing, okay? There's so many things that they're doing that are wrong. Well, most people who behave that way aren't filled with humility and strength. They're filled with pride and weakness. So a humble, strong person would say, you know what? I need to be more accountable. I was making these mistakes. I'm on it. I got to just own it. But a person who generally has a habit of these things is a liar and prideful. So they're not going to say, that's my fault, I did it. They're going to want to turn it on you. They're going to want to do what from the beginning of time happened when Adam tried to throw God under the bus for Eve, saying, the woman you gave me made me eat the fruit. Wow. Like if as human beings, we think we can do that to God, then we certainly are going to do it to our boss, aren't we? So the reason that I'm not number one is because you didn't provide me the tool, the idea, the training, the autonomy, the whatever it is. Or my partner over here, or the coworker you gave me is making me perform bad. The leads you gave me aren't any good, or you didn't give me leads, whatever it might be. Or even worse, what they'll do is they'll say, well, I would be number one. It's just that I'm a good family guy. What did you say? Did you just say that you would be number one in sales on this team, but you're such a good family man that it prevents you from being good at sales? So you've done two simultaneous things. The first thing you did is we condemned all of our top performers as being bad with their family. Like you were saying that in order to be good at this job, you have to be bad with your family. The second thing that you're saying is that I expect you to be number one, which means that I am demanding for you to be bad with your family. Wow, that's like, okay, that's a full sale, total indictment of every single person here except for you. You're the amazing person because you're a low performer, which is a sure sign that you're a dedicated performer as a husband and father. BS. It is a sign that you're probably weak there. Now, we all know people who work so hard that they're bad with their family. But most people who work hard actually work hard at home too. They're giving it their all in all places, and they're working hard for good reasons. But that is one of these things. It's a self-righteous deflection that people do it all the time. It's the classic thing where somebody is doing something wrong and you approach them about it and they go, well, you're doing that. Based on what? Based on nothing other than the fact that you're deflecting from yourself. Okay, the next one, and the last one I'm going to cover today, is low performance without asking for help. This is a huge one right here. If a person performs at a low level, now, by the way, if a person's performing at a high level, okay, higher than they're even supposed to, or at least equal to the standard, and they're not communicating very often, that is not the same thing. If they're ambiguous, it's also not the same thing. If they have positive news, it's usually about something, not nothing, okay? So some of these things can be false indicators, but the one thing you can know is that they have at least an average or a high-level performance, and because of that, they don't have a lack of accountability because they're accountable to their results first and foremost, and they're getting them. But low performance without asking for help is a huge issue, okay? And you see this a lot. You'll see somebody in low performance, oh my goodness, they'll claim they're doing everything they're supposed to do. They're meeting the corporate metrics on what activity they're supposed to have. If they're pulling a lever to make widgets, if they're in a recruiting department and they're contacting people and resumes to set up interviews, or they're in sales and they have to do appointments, whatever it happens to be. In production, they're doing something else. They could be in design and have a certain amount of material they have to design over a period of time. If they are not performing at the level they're supposed to perform at, and they never ask your help, it is because they are being lazy. Now, you might say, well, Dave, that sounds a little mean. Maybe they're just not good at it yet and they need your support. Yes, they'd be asking for help. That's the difference. So I'm not saying that everybody comes out of the gates performing or that every single good person out there can't underperform at times. What I'm saying is that the good people who are honest out there, who accept responsibility, are accountable to their low performance, and they seek help to become a better performer. It's the person who you don't want on your team who is the liar, and by the way, that sounds harsh, but it's just true, who is the liar or the person who you can't trust, who claims to be working but not getting results, and they don't ask for help. Why? Because in most things that we do, the commitment to the work and the repetition of the work is harder than actually accomplishing the thing that they're doing. So I'll give you an example. And I've used a few of these before, but To become a virtuoso with an instrument, you have to run the same chords and notes over and over and over and over again, millions and millions of times. Anybody who did that millions and millions and millions of times would develop the actual skill. So what makes that person different, now some people have such a natural high level of talent that there's going to be a different outcome when they have a million repetitions than a person with a lower level of talent. We know that, okay? So I'm not saying all these outcomes are going to be the same based on the same amount of effort. Lifting weights is an example. If one person ate the same type of diet as somebody else and they did the same weight routine, the naturally stronger person will have better outcomes than the naturally weaker, smaller person, right? We know this. But for the most part, there's a range in the middle there that we can actually demonstrate and understand to be real. And if a person pursues the same amount of activity, they're going to get a certain range of success that is very high. So the thing that separates most high performers from lower performers is their commitment to doing the work and the repetitions. That is the thing that usually matters. So a person can't have the dedication, the drive, the virtue to commit to the hard work and the repetitions, but then somehow lack the virtue to say, this isn't going well, please help me do better. I've never seen that actually happen. For example, most sales jobs require getting a lot of appointments. Now, some you get appointments through ClickFunnels, others you're actually going out there and getting sales, whatever it might be. And then there's selling, airplanes where you're not going to have tons of appointments and you really have to close the ones you have and they're long-term relationships. But most sales positions are the type of thing where you've got a bunch of leads, you've got to, filter through those leads, you've got to make phone calls or set meetings in ways that require a lot of endurance, and you've got to handle the rejection to get the meetings, and then you go to the meeting, and then you have a certain closing percentage. The amount of time, work, effort, and discipline that is required to set the meeting usually exceeds what is required by way of talent and skill to close the sale. So a person got a lot of meetings. So they have a lot of meetings, but they're not closing any sales. It's unlikely they could be that savvy, that smart, that effective, that driven to get the appointments, but all of a sudden when they get to the appointment, they're unable to carry those same traits over into the presentation. Again, I've seen that happen in rare circumstances, so this isn't an absolute, but by and large, that doesn't happen. And so it's important to know that we can look for these indicators. And when a person does not ask for help, but they claim to have all sorts of activity, it is likely they're not doing the activity at all. Now, if you're taking away from this message that you're going to walk up to some of your employees or team members and say, I just watched a video, so therefore I'm going to accuse you of lying, you're watching it the wrong way. But if you are watching it and your antenna went up, and you're like, let me look into this a little bit more, you're watching it the right way. You need to be smart about these things. You need to think about them. That's why in Leading Giants, I have a chapter called Think Like a Criminal. And that is to actually, like a detective would, to be a good detective, they have to think the way criminals think. And that allows them to have the insight. So as a parent, you have to think the way a kid would think. And as a high-performing leader, you have to think like a low-performing excuse maker, because then you can get ahead of those things to understand what those things are. Otherwise, you can't. You think everybody thinks the way you do as a high-performer leader. And that's one of the reasons that some people are ineffective in leading. They're so driven, they're so high-performing that they don't understand other people that don't do it. So they either have no patience for people that are low performers, or they just miss it and they assume everybody's like them, but, for whatever reason, they're just, can't get it done or whatever. So it's very, very important to have these particular insights. That is all I have for you today. So if you do that, you can be a giant and we can go slay some dragons.